Early this morning at 4:20, Ubaba Credo Mutwa was laid to rest. I have decided to do a short contribution towards his life, trying to give the system that gave us Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa. The passing of Vusamazulu Credo Mutwa has the potential to be a much needed further catalyst in the African indigenous knowledge system movement. The reason for this is twofold. It's the reflection upon his work and legacy will force Africans to have an uncomfortable level of introspection regarding the reality of their liberation and identity. But more importantly, a look at the systems in place. We need to begin to look past the individual that is Credo Mutwa and ask ourselves that when he returns to us as Itongo, will the system be able to create an even better version of him? By furthering the IKS movement in Africa, we begin to restore the African spiritual identity of Africa and her people. The colonial era destroyed a fair amount of our identity in attempts to replicate itself through us. Of all the atrocities that came with colonialism, the destruction of our culture or cultural identity was the worst of them all. Our African spirituality was founded on our cultural place. It is by executing our customs and rituals that we were able to invoke our ancestral spirits to provoke us with wisdom and guidance, but more particularly our spiritual gifts. Africans never had culture of documentation, not because we're intellectually incapable, but because we had a developed, far more encrypted process. This process provided more protection than any encryption or copyright law could fathom. Africans had the ability to pass on wisdom and knowledge through spiritual inheritance. This communication network between yourself and your spirit or spirits cannot be breached, altered, or interfered with because it is not bound or understood by the science of the five senses, brackets, the Western science. Even genetic inheritance can now be altered in such a way that you are a foreign to even your mother, but spiritual inheritance cannot. Spiritual inheritance is Africa's first and last hope for the future. We need to return to our cultural practice and look at it with a different lens. We cannot see culture as means of controlling people's behavior, but rather a means of acquiring ancestral gifts. We must go back and practice culture for spiritual liberation and not out of obligation. We are expecting spirituality, unidentified and insecure African bodies to cement their place in the world. It cannot be so. It must change. We need to give Africa and her children a system designed for them to thrive. Only an African built on a system with the principles of IKS integrated into it can thrive. The development and implementation of indigenous knowledge systems in Africa needs more attention and resources dedicated to it. Credo Mutwa is one of the many great Africans who pioneered the harsh and unforgiving terrain of post-colonial Africa to lay a foundation on which we begin to build a better system. Contemporary African society is in a difficult place. The majority of our civilization was built on the exclusion of indigenous people. This exclusion was made to filter into every facet of society, especially the education system. Is the education system we have right now geared in every way possible to produce more minds like Credo Mutwa? And if not, why? I'm here to tell you that we do not have the answers, but we are on the right track and have begun the journey. The relationship between Umsamo Institute, University of KwaZulu-Natal, is in the spirit of IKS. The Department of Arts and Culture support and believe in the IKS movement. But we cannot do it alone. We need more organizations committed to the dream, so that one day when Credo Mutwa returns as Itongo, he may possess on our students and bless us once more with the great knowledge and wisdom. This is my prayer. Please, can we as African government, can we as black people born and bred in Africa respect, support our own African values? Let's not shy away. Let's not be leaders who are scared of being Africans and of being black. Thank you. Bedlindaba, VVO Kaluphuzi Mkhize.